Hi class. So in an earlier video, I talked about some of the mechanics of the elements of short story that we rely on because they're very tangible. They're things that we can see, like characters, plot, point of view, setting. These are things that we can actually see, we can quote, and we can discuss in that way because they're so tangible. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about some elements in fiction that go beyond the tangible, where you need some critical thinking skills to figure out what's going on in the story. So those include symbolism, theme, style, tone, and irony. And that's what I call reading between the lines, because you need to have much more critical thinking skills to figure these things out than um, the other obvious ones that you can point with your finger. So when reading a story, you can often figure out the obvious parts of it with plot, character, point of view, and setting. However, there's more to a story that you can interpret by reading between the lines. The skills you would use to do that is by making inferences. When you make inferences, you rely on the suggestions made by the author. As a reader, you can make inferences about a story and analyze it by looking at it through symbolism, theme, style, tone, and irony. Now, when you're making inferences, you can't just go making up things that go beyond what's being told to you in the story. So you still have to be connected. You still have to rely on what you get, obviously, but you just make connections from what those obvious things are. So we'll talk about that a little more in the next few PowerPoint slides. So the first one is called symbolism. So a symbol can be a person, an object, an event that suggests more than its literal meaning. Authors use symbolism to foreshadow future events. Symbols often appear as a way to shed light on the story. Symbols are hidden meanings embedded in a story to give readers a chance to interpret the message of a story. So sometimes a dead dog or a dead animal could foreshadow a dead human being that's going to happen later because death is coming. That's been done in many stories. Oftentimes animals are used in symbolic ways to reveal parts of a community, how they treat the animals, how they treat each other, or what's happening to the animal is happening to what's going on around them. In To Kill a Mockingbird, the mockingbird was definitely a symbol of something very precious that makes beautiful music, and it's a shame to kill a mockingbird, which had a lot to do with the character of Tom Robinson, and it was a symbolic meaning of the way you don't kill a bird the same way, a mockingbird, the same way you wouldn't kill someone like Tom Robinson. These are symbolic meanings. There's different things beside. It could be a car, it could be a weather event, it could be snow, it could be a blockade. A lot of things could be symbolism. You have to really be able to look in the story, and how you interpret symbolism has a lot to do with how you're looking at the story and from your own particular point of view. And you and your friend could be reading the same story, but come up with different symbols. And that's very common because everyone looks at things from different perspectives and they see different nuances. And authors put in many, many shades in a story. A good author will put many, many shades, many, many symbols to to convey his or her message. So there are conventional symbols that are often referred to that we know what that means. So a ring on the left hand indicates a married person. So an author may not say so and so is married, but just describe the ring on the left hand finger. Or an author may not say a person's religion, but just talk about their religious ornaments to relay that message for you. So there are conventional symbols that are very common to us that we know of, that we can say, oh yes, and we don't have to go further than that because those are conventional symbols. But the unconventional ones are things that can come from anywhere. It could be the weather, it could be an event, it could be all sorts of things that come from all over the place that could be symbols. So a literary symbol could be a setting, character, action, object, name of anything, or anyone, a work that means literal significance while suggests the other meanings. In your reading, you should be watching for symbols that may be repeated or have a common thread that links them. So sometimes the symbol of a dog could reappear many times. Sometimes the symbol of a color can reappear many times. The color black or the color blue could appear many, many times, and it has symbolic meaning to it. It could be a symbol of a ribbon. Lots of things that could be repeated. So one of the important things is to look at what's being repeated. Are characters repeatedly going to a particular color or using a particular object? Or are there lots of dogs or lots of birds in your story, or maybe lots of cats? These symbols have a strong message for the reader. It could be waves in the ocean. They could have other significant meanings than what the actual meaning is. So maybe an ocean wave isn't really talking about the literal ocean waves, but just the changing in times and or the changing of days. It depends on how the author is using it. Sometimes they could say the winds blew this morning at, so and so speed, and then a few pages later the winds blew that way. Oftentimes authors will you also use the sun, the sun setting or the sun rising as a symbol that day has begun, night is in. So those are also symbols that are repeated throughout a story for telling a story. The theme. The best way to define theme is to say that a theme has a unifying point. Some people think that theme is the moral of the story or the lesson, but the theme is much broader than that. The theme is one idea that holds the story together. So examples of theme could be moral values such as religious values, or questioning conventional role models. We're looking at A Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. And definitely it's questioning the conventional role models of marriage. And it's also questioning the convention of marriage and relationships. And that's the theme of the story there. It goes beyond that, but those are some of the things that stories do, is that they have this theme, um, this overall. It could be, some stories could be talking about the moral values of human character, like in To Kill a Mockingbird, about the moral values of the community that puts Tom on trial with very little evidence. That's questioning the moral values of the people in the community and what they're doing. So that would be the theme of a story. The style refers to the way the author writes his or her piece. Some authors use very few words to get a story across, and Hemingway was really good with that. He hardly used any words, but he told a big story, while others use very descriptive, long passages to get a story across. Henry James is an author that comes to my mind who used very descriptive, long passages to get a story across, where he would describe a street in 8 pages, whereas Hemingway could do that in like 3 or 4 sentences. So style of the author differs. So you should think about the style of the author and what you like and what you don't like. If you don't like very wordy, descriptive passages, some authors who rely on that can spend many, many hours just describing one little thing, while other authors could use 3 or 4 words to describe that same thing. And so it all depends on the author and the way the author uses language. So style is very personal to the author, and it's something you should look at. Mostly for you, if you like it or you don't like it, or how you feel about it. It's a really important aspect. The tone refers to the attitude or the mood of the work, and that's not necessarily the attitude and the mood of the author, but it's the story that's being told, or the work that's being presented to you. So I use the example of Edgar Allan Poe was very dark and gruesome. So some authors are serious, and some authors are funny, and some authors are sentimental. In Poe's work, there was always death. There was always murder. There was always a sneaky person behind it. The tone was always really dark, very mysterious. And some people love that. And some people don't like that. Some authors are really funny to read, and everything is just funny from beginning, middle, and end. Some authors are sentimental. Some authors are serious. So the best way to figure out the tone of the work is to check out how it made you feel. If you were laughing, then the tone was humorous. If you were in suspense, then the tone was mysterious. And what you like to read will definitely decide on what kind of tone you like to take on. So I know in college you're assigned books and things to read with the tone of whatever the teacher makes you read, but later in life you'll be able to read whatever you want to read, and so you can start choosing authors that you prefer now and read them later on in more details. Irony is when something happens, or when someone says something and the opposite happens, or it's an irony is like we expect one thing and another result, the opposite result occurs as a result. And so it becomes very ironic, and it's not something that we expect. A good story will always have an ironic twist. So the really famous story that is ironic is The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, which is a Christmas story about a married couple who have very little money to buy gifts for each other. And so the woman sells her hair to get money to buy her husband a chain for his watch. This is a very old story, by the way. It's told in the early 1900s. So that's why the man wears a watch with a chain. But of course, he doesn't have a chain for his watch to hang it on his vest. So she sells her hair to get money to buy the chain. And he sells his watch to be able to buy combs for her beautiful long hair. And so what's ironic is that she doesn't have hair to use the combs, and he doesn't have a watch to put the chain on. So that's called irony, and that's one of the famous ironic twist stories of all time. So irony occurs when we expect something and the opposite happens, and that's what irony means. Irony can be seen in language and words. Sometimes titles of stories are ironic. This happens when the title is opposite of what happens in the story. Some characters also use ironic language in a story. Irony creates tension and also helps readers get the message of the story. So we actually, as a society, like irony. We're constantly looking for irony in our leaders, in our stories. So it creates some sort of tension for us, and it keeps us hanging in our seats. It's a good idea to reread a story several times to get the message of the beyond the literal meaning. By looking at the symbol, theme, tone, style, and irony, you can get a better understanding of the story and the point the author is making. When analyzing a story, you should consider not only the literal meaning of the story, but the interpretive meaning as well. So in your writing and in your essays, what you always want to do is you always want to talk about the interpretations that you make in the stories. And this takes some critical thinking. So you have to reread the stories and you have to start making connections of what's going on in the story. So I hope this helped explain some reading beyond the between the lines, and I hope this helps you in reading the stories for this week.